The second you try to justify yourself, it's already over. Imagine this. Someone throws an accusation your way. Maybe it's a subtle dig at a social gathering. Maybe they question your abilities in front of everyone. Maybe your partner twists what you said. You feel that rush of heat. The stress hormone floods your system. Every fiber of your being screams that you're being misread, that the facts are being warped, that you need to set things straight right now. So you respond. You break it down. You defend yourself. You add context. And in that precise moment, you've given them complete control. Here's why. The world doesn't measure you by how accurate your words are. It measures you by how desperate you sound when you say them. The person who justifies is the person who submits. The person who defends is the person who grants someone else the right to pass judgment on them. Niccolo Machiavelli, the tactician of power, grasped a savage reality that modern culture has tried to condition out of you. He recognized that power isn't about being correct. It's about who controls the narrative. And the instant you defend yourself, you enter their narrative. You become the accused in their trial. But what if you refuse to play? What if when the attack arrived, you did the one thing that shakes a manipulator to their core? Most people live as emotional marionettes. They're controlled by the reactions of everyone around them. Someone disapproves, they say sorry. Someone attacks, they explain. They exist in perpetual reactive mode, desperately trying to demonstrate they're good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. It's an exhausting way to live. It's slow spiritual suffocation. But there's another path, a way of existing in this world that's so detached, so self-contained, and so mentally fortified that attacks don't just deflect off you. They evaporate before they make contact. This isn't about coldness. This isn't about arrogance. This is about fundamentally shifting where you source your sense of reality. Right now, we're going to break down the psychology of refusing to defend. We're going to examine why your nervous system betrays you in these situations and how to replace it with a tactic Machiavelli would have shared in secret. I'm going to reveal how to reverse the power dynamic instantly, how to make your attacker question their own perception, how to weaponize silence not as emptiness but as a strategic force that demolishes someone's ego. But here's the warning. This demands you eliminate a part of yourself you've been nurturing since childhood. That part that desperately needs to be understood. That part that craves approval. Kill that need and you become formidable. You become unreachable. Let's dive in. So why do you react this way? Why is your automatic response to accusations to immediately present your case? It begins in early childhood. Think back. You're 5 years old and an adult accuses you of something. What was your only escape route? Explaining yourself. I didn't do it. It was an accident. He started it. You discovered that authority figures control judgment. And you discovered that your safety relied on persuading that authority you were innocent. The issue is you aged, but that psychological pattern didn't. You're still walking around projecting that authority figure onto every person you encounter. Your supervisor, your romantic partner, random people online, even your critics. When you justify yourself to someone, you're unconsciously communicating, you hold the power to judge me. I'm the child. Please validate me so I can feel secure. It radiates weakness. And humans, as primitive as we remain, detect that scent of submission immediately. Machiavelli stated, "It is far safer to be feared than loved." Now apply that to contemporary social interaction. It's far safer to be respected than understood. When you rush to defend yourself, you're choosing being understood over being respected. You're essentially saying, please comprehend my intentions. Please see what I meant. But a ruler doesn't explain his commands to subjects. A predator doesn't justify its hunt to prey. The moment you start rambling, providing reasons, showing evidence, referencing past situations to validate your position, you've signaled that your inner peace depends on their approval. You've handed them access to your foundation. And once they possess that access, they can destabilize you whenever they choose. This is the trap of seeking validation. You think if you just articulate it precisely enough, they'll respond. Oh, now I understand. You're correct. I was mistaken. How frequently does that actually occur? Almost never, because the attack was never about discovering truth. It was about establishing dominance. They didn't challenge you because they wanted facts. They challenged you to see if you'd react, and you reacted. The first principle of becoming untouchable is understanding that the courtroom is an illusion. There's no judge. There's no jury. There's only you and how you perceive reality. When you stop treating others as judges, their accusations stop feeling like verdicts. They become what they are, opinions. And opinions are simply background noise. So what happens when you don't react? Picture the scene. Someone launches a verbal attack. You're being completely selfish right now. The old version of you responds, no, I'm not. I did this and that for you yesterday. I'm just exhausted, defensive, weak, reactive. Now consider the Machiavellian response. They say you're being completely selfish right now. You look directly at them. You maintain eye contact. You don't flinch. Your expression stays completely neutral. You allow the silence to stretch for 3, 4, 5 seconds. You know what occurs in that silence. It creates a psychological void. The human mind fears silence during confrontation. It signals a breakdown in social dynamics. It signals the other person has stopped playing by the rules. When you remain silent, you're reflecting their energy directly back at them. You're making them sit in the tension they manufactured. Typically, they'll begin to fracture. They'll speak again to break the silence. I mean, you're not always selfish, just in this moment. Why are you staring at me like that? They start defending themselves against your silence. The power has shifted. This is the gray rock technique elevated to a weapon. You transform into emptiness. Emptiness can't be attacked. You can't strike fog. You can't wound water. By refusing to offer the resistance of defense, you let their attack pass straight through you, leaving them off balance. This demands tremendous internal discipline because your ego is raging inside. Fight back. Say something sharp. Prove them wrong. You must control that impulse. Machiavelli understood that the most powerful presence in any space is the one who remains unreadable. If you defend, you expose your vulnerabilities. You expose what wounds you. You expose your triggers. I'm not stupid, you protest. Now they know your insecurity revolves around intelligence. I'm not a terrible person. Now they know your insecurity involves moral judgment. Silence exposes nothing. It's a dark mirror. And when they stare into it, they only witness their own aggression reflected, and it unsettles them. It makes them feel scrutinized, which is ironic because you haven't uttered a sound. Sometimes silence isn't sufficient. Sometimes the situation demands words, but never defensive words. If you must speak, never push against the force. Pull it instead. Use conversational keto. There's a concept in dark psychology called agree and amplify. It generates cognitive dissonance in the attacker. If someone accuses you of something ridiculous, defending yourself legitimizes the absurdity. It implies the accusation deserves a response. Instead, you lean into it. You exaggerate it until it becomes absurd. Attacker. You're so obsessed with money. You're greedy. Defensive response. No, I'm not. I just want to support my family. Boring, predictable, powerless. Machiavellian response. You caught me. I actually dive into a vault of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck every Tuesday. Terrible for my spine. You deliver it deadpan or with a hint of amusement. What have you accomplished? You've refused to be insulted. You've demonstrated you're not insecure about the subject. You've transformed their serious attack into absurdity. You've established that you control the frame of reality, not them. This disarms the attacker completely. They wanted to wound you. Instead, you took their weapon and started using it casually. It communicates amused mastery. Amused mastery is the pinnacle of high status. It's the demeanor of a parent observing a toddler's tantrum. You don't become angry at the toddler. You don't debate with the toddler. You're amused by the theatrics because you know you're unthreatened. When you defend yourself, you're getting down on the ground and screaming alongside the toddler. Don't do that. Stay standing. Look down. Smile slightly. Robert Greene in the 48 Laws of Power discusses Law 25, recreate yourself. Part of that involves rejecting the identity others attempt to force upon you. When they label you, they're trying to confine you. If you resist the confinement, you're still engaging with the confinement. If you mock the confinement, you dissolve it. You're arrogant. I prefer charmingly confident but sure. You don't care about anyone but yourself. I'm working on it. I'll add you to my list of concerns next year. It's cutting, it's dismissive, and it's magnetic. Why? Because it demonstrates wholeness. You don't require their validation to know your identity. A person who knows they're generous finds it amusing when called selfish. A person who knows they're intelligent finds it amusing when called dumb. If you're defending, it's because somewhere deep down you fear they might be accurate. And that's the inner work you must address. Let's explore the deeper structure of interaction. Every conversation contains a hidden hierarchy. In conflict, there's typically a judge and a defendant. The judge asks questions. Why did you do that? What were you thinking? Who do you think you are? The defendant answers. I did it because I was thinking that. Whoever asks the questions holds the power. Whoever provides answers loses status. The most lethal Machiavellian tactic is to simply refuse the defendant role and claim the judge role instead. You accomplish this by responding to questions with questions or by analyzing their behavior instead of your own. Them, why are you always so late? Defensive response. There was traffic and my alarm failed. Losing. Machiavellian response. Why does my arrival time impact your emotional state so significantly? See the shift. Suddenly, we're not discussing punctuality. We're discussing their emotional regulation. We're discussing their reaction. You've redirected the spotlight onto them. Them, you're being ridiculous. Machiavellian response. What drives you to use dismissive labels to make your point? You're psychoanalyzing them in real time. This infuriates manipulators. They want you defensive. Instead, you're circling them, studying them like a laboratory specimen. It's interesting you perceive it that way. Does saying that provide you comfort? You seem deeply invested in this. These phrases function as shields. They acknowledge the sound emerging from their mouth, but they don't accept the content. It's a boundary, a verbal force field. You're communicating, this is your issue, not mine. Keep it. This isn't merely a technique, it's a spiritual position. It's recognizing that other people's perceptions of you are not your concern. Their anger belongs to them. Their disappointment is their responsibility to manage. When you defend, you're attempting to carry their emotional burden for them. You're trying to repair their feelings. Stop. Let them carry their own weight. Now for the paradox. Sometimes the most aggressive, power-shifting move you can make is to agree, but not how you'd expect. This isn't submissive agreement. This is agreement from the abyss. Imagine someone shouting at you. They're cataloging your flaws. They're attempting to provoke combat. You look them in the eye and state calmly, "You're right." Then you stop. "You're right, I am difficult sometimes." "You're right, I did mess that up." This is the fogging technique. When you throw a stone into fog, what happens? Nothing. No impact, no rebound, it simply vanishes. When you agree with an attacker, you steal their momentum. They're pushing against a door they expect to be locked. When you open it, they tumble forward. They wanted conflict. They wanted resistance. Resistance validates their anger. Agreement neutralizes it. But here's the subtlety. You must agree with the factual element in their statement without accepting the shame they're trying to attach. There's a difference between acknowledging an error and accepting character assassination. You messed up this report. You're incompetent. Defense. I'm not incompetent. The data was flawed. Power move. You're right. The report contains errors. I'll correct it. Notice what's missing. You didn't address the incompetent label. You ignored the insult and addressed the fact. You took ownership of the action but not the identity. This signals profound confidence. Only someone secure in their competence can admit a mistake so effortlessly. Insecure people fight desperately to deny any mistake. Secure people say, "My error," and continue forward. Machiavelli would call this disarming the enemy. If you lower your weapon, they appear foolish holding theirs. It removes their justification. It makes them seem unhinged while you appear composed. And ultimately, history remembers the composed. None of this functions if it's purely tactical. If you're using these phrases but your voice trembles or your eyes shift or your energy screams, "Please accept me," it will collapse. Dark psychology is 20% words and 80% nonverbal frame. You must construct the internal foundation to support the silence. This returns us to shadow work. Why does their attack sting? Because they're touching a wound that already exists. If I tell you you have purple skin, you won't get upset. You'll think I'm delusional. You won't defend yourself. You'll laugh. But if I tell you you're a failure and you defend yourself, it's because part of you suspects I might be correct. The ultimate defense isn't a verbal strategy. It's self-knowledge. It's confronting your own darkness, owning your own imperfections, and embracing your own shadow. When you know you're capable of selfishness and someone calls you selfish, you say, "Sometimes, yes." When you know you're capable of cruelty and someone calls you cruel, you say, "I can be." You cannot shame someone who has already accepted themselves. You cannot expose someone who has nothing left to conceal. This is what it means to be untouchable. It means you've integrated the aspects of yourself that others weaponize against you. You become transparent. The light passes through. The attacks pass through. You're no longer a fortress requiring defense. You are the wind. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, you're playing a game. The game is called no defense. Regardless of what occurs, regardless of how minor the accusation, you're prohibited from explaining yourself. If you're late, state, "I'm late." Don't provide the reason. If you spill coffee, say, "I spilled the coffee." Don't blame the cup. If someone misinterprets you, let them misinterpret. Sit in the fire of that discomfort. Feel the compulsion to correct it, to manage their perception, to be seen as good. And let that compulsion burn away completely. Watch what happens to those around you. Watch how they respond when you stop participating in the game. You'll witness confusion, then respect, then a peculiar form of magnetism. Because people gravitate towards certainty, and nothing communicates certainty more powerfully than someone who doesn't need to justify their existence. You're reclaiming your energy. You're sealing the leaks in your spirit. You're stepping out of the child role and into the sovereign role. The world will attempt to pull you back. It will attempt to bait you. It thrives on reaction. Don't provide one. Maintain your mystery. Maintain your power. Maintain your silence. If this philosophy speaks to the darker, deeper part of your consciousness, the part that's exhausted from performing for others, then you know your next move. Subscribe, but not because I requested it. Subscribe because you're finished being prey in a world of predators.